Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Chof Aleph, Halacha Yudalet. If Yudalet, it's a very important halacha today. This is Lisha making mixtures on Shabbos. So let's go through what the Mechaber says, and then we'll try and summarize sort of the practical halacha today. Says the Mechaber, Ein Megablin, you're not allowed to knead Pirush and Sinas Mayim Bekemach Nikr Gibel. When you add water to flour, that's called kneading with a K. Kemach Kli Harbe. Flour from roasted wheat, because you might come to mix together to knead flour which is not roasted and therefore make a very firm mixture. You're allowed to mix together the roasted grain little by little. Shlish, but tvur, which is very immature and hasn't grown a full, only a third. Shekalu oisa, which you roasted it. V'achkach tochmes, and then you ground it. Techina gasa, a very rough grinding. Shari kachol, shari kachol. V'hinikras shasisa, and this is like sand, like a sand material, and it's called shasisa, which the Gemara talks about. Muta legabel mimena b'chometz. That you're allowed to add vinegar to this type of grain. If you do a lot of water or liquid added to it in one go, so long as it's soft, avol kosher, but if it's a firm mixture, it's a belila kosher, then it's also because then it looks like you're making a dough type of substance, and that's not allowed. And even if you do a belila racha, a soft mixture, a loose mixture, then you need to still do a shinui. You do it the other way around. You put the shtisa, this grain, in the pot, and then you add the chometz, and you do it that way around, which is the reverse of the normal. Okay, so that's what the Mechaber says. Let's do the Mishnah Berurah, and then we'll talk about the practical halachas about making, Weetabix and kneading all these Lisha shilas that come up. So says the Mishnah Berurah Sivkot Nun. Hine koydem shenovu leva'er divrei Shulchan Aruch. Before I come and explain the actual words of the Shulchan Aruch, nevar ksas ayin inyan Lisha. Let me first explain the inyan of Lisha. Lisha hi achas milametes melachas. Lisha is one of the 39 melachas, making a mixture. And it doesn't have to only be with water, it can be any liquid. It can be with honey, shuman avos and goose fat, or any other liquid, the way you're joining entities together. When it comes to Lisha, the Brisa in the Gemara says, one person's put flour, so the first guy comes along and pours the flour into the bowl, and the second guy comes along and pours the water. The second guy is chayiv divrei Rabbi. Rabbi Yosef no, just pouring water onto flour isn't osa, says Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, but you've got to actually knead it together. That's when you're over the issa of Lisha. Or pasku reva poskim Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, that you only chayiv Lisha for Lisha once you actually knead it together. Das Baal HaTrumas v'siyata lifsek Rebbe. However, the Baal HaTrumas and others paskin like Rebbe that merely pouring the water onto the flour is also. This is specifically talking about flour or dirt, dust, tit and cement, that sort of material. V'chol and sand hadak shu bar gibel. Which are very kneadable, let's say. Who lav bar gibel could go in afer, v'chol hagas, for example, ash or very thick sand. That if you need that type of material, it doesn't come into like a firm mixture, and therefore there's only an issa drabon and not deraisa. And other rishonim say the opposite. The b'davar delav bar gibel, that is something which is not a bar gibel. After Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, loy boy gibel. You don't even need gibel. The zel gibula. That the gibel is just pouring the water on it. Now let me explain the words of the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so the Mechaber said, "Ein megablin," i.e., in the sinas mayim bekemach, you're not allowed to pour water onto the flour from roasted wheat. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nanav, "Hai lishna lav dafka." The Mechaber Ayri Pei Belisha Gemura Shenoisin Mayim Megabel. But the Mechaber is talking about where you take water and you add it onto the flour and you do a Maisa Gibel of kneading it together. Shema Yavai Kol Ze Hasifu Loshna Rambam. This the Shulchan Aruch as often is quoting the wording of the Rambam. Usvirle the Kemach Kli, that the flour from roasted grain, lav bar gibel, is not really kneadable, K with a K, the davar the lav bar gibel ein chayav af kashegible, and therefore something which is not really bar gibel, you're not chayav even if you do knead it together. Ve'ein also midrabanan, and this is drabanan shema yav lolish kemach she'ena kali, that you might come to knead flour which is not roasted. And therefore, with a shinu, it's allowed to do the Maisa Lisha. And even those poskim who say that roasted flour is bar gibel, they even agree that if you do it with a shinu, it'll be allowed. Unless you did it before Shabbos. Kemach she'ena kali, Mishnah Berurah Nun Gimel, ubazeh afilu ma'at ma'at is also, because it makes a proper dough type of material. Ma'at ma'at v'loi harbe. Turning over the page, bein im oisa b'li l'raka ei kasha. Whether you do a b'li l'raka ei kasha, the shiur the ma'at ma'at and the shear of pouring little bits of liquid onto this material. The poskim don't say clearly how much is a little. So long as, even he said, if you have a very small amount, the shear of a gregaris, that would make it also. Okay, tchina gasa, sort of a roughly grounded wheat. Because we're not really worried that you might come to do it with very fine flour. Because that's not considered kemach. This material, it's tchina gas, is not really considered kemach flour. Kasha also, but if you do it, you make a firm fixture. That's a firm mixture. That's not allowed. Nunvov. But split by bit would be okay. Va'afilu berach ein betashekosov the osel ha'arev b'Shabbos shel Pesach kemach she'osim mit tchina matzah, that you can't ground mixed water with ground matzah afuya, which has been baked previously. Lidin b'yayin d'meidvash, to add wine or honey water. I did zomin l'shisa because it's similar to shatisa, this thing that we have tchina gasa, which is like a rough type of tchina. V'sham muta. And therefore, with the shinu, that will be allowed. But sometimes you have a situation where you're not sure what the shinu is. Do you put the Weetabix in first and then the milk, or the milk and then the Weetabix? Right? Sometimes it's not clear. And therefore, if you do make a large amount, then you've got a problem. You do a shinu that the Gemara describes, i.e., that always you put the food first. And you've got to be careful not to mix it with a kaf, with a spoon. You just move, you shake the kli until the mixture mixes together. That's considered the shinui. Even a thick mixture, he forbids a thick mixture in all situations. Okay, I'll talk about the practicals shortly. Nearly the osla hashtin al tit mishum gibel. You're not allowed to urinate on cement or sand mishum gibel, because it might come to make a dough type mixture of the sand with the liquid. Even according to those poskim who say that you're only going to be chayav once you actually knead it together, not just by pouring the liquid on it, nevertheless there'll be an issa to do so. And so too, urinating over loose earth, or bechol and sand. Even though you have no intention of lisha, of making a dough type material, it's inevitable. And a kli where you are roikek by esarechetz by bepiv, you b'Shabbos you spit. I think it's called a spittoon. You spit into it on Shabbos. V'tachtav yesh chol hadak igas, and at the base of it you've got some sand or things like that. Yesh la'aynimu also muta. You got to investigate if that's allowed. Do ulai have a psik reisha delay nichle. You might not care if there's like a dough material, if you like, has been formed, but nevertheless it might still be also. And what's also been said for beis me'ed and matir, he allows it. Mitam zeb makam atzorech afilu lahashtin al tit. Even to be mashtin on tit, he will allow. V'nir de yesh lismech al zeh b'makom shatit eina sheloi, because then it's really lo nichele. Ta'oz bevada lo nichele b'lishasa kos v'chai odom k'shemechas meraglaim b'chol v'ofa. When you cover over, if a person urinated and he wants to cover over the liquid with the chol or efer, chshitin ma'atiyem masarav meraglaim v'avikmolishin. If you put a little bit at a time, then it might become a dough type material. When it's in its ma'im chayiv lahara poskim, and therefore the answer is v'chein yitzin harba efer v'chol v'oz the nikah klal halisha. If you therefore put a lot of sand on top of it, that will solve the problem. Okay, so I know that was a bit quick, but let me just read to you from my own Hilchah Shabbos notes about Lisha. So in short, there are three types of mixtures that you could make. One is belila ava, one is belila raka, and one is a very watery type of liquid. So belila ava, to make that on Shabbos would be a deraisa. For example, like an egg salad or charoses, where you make like a thick mixture, a mass that doesn't flow or flows very, very slowly. So imagine like a thick charoses, making that on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Okay, Yom Tov is a bit different, but that could be an issa deraisa of belila ava, of Lisha. Belila raka would be something which is looser, for example, applesauce or loose baby cereal. You know, you've got the baby, the grain and the cereal, and then you add the liquid, the milk, and it's one mass, but it does flow. That's a belila raka. The difficulty here is defining what is belila ava, belila raka sometimes. And then you have very watery mixtures, for example, chocolate milk. Yeah, you have which is almost like a liquid, or baby cereal, and then that's no problem to make that on Shabbos. So belila ava is a deraisa, belila raka is a drabanon, and the watery mixtures is no problem. But don't mix it too slowly. When you pour the first bit of milk into the chocolate Nesquik or whatever it is, don't do it very slowly because you could have a belila raka at the beginning. If you need to make it very liquid, then you add it quickly. Now there are two shinuyim for the two stages of the Lisha process. Two shinuyim that we spoke about. One is a shinu b'seda and one is a shinu b'lisha. So shinu b'seda means you're reversing the sequence in which the ingredients are commonly added. So say for example you have your cereal and then you add milk to it. So on Shabbos you could put the liquid first and then you add the cereal. That's one shinu. That's a shinu b'seda. Then you have a shinu b'lisha, which means the way in which you actually mix it. You're doing it differently. So for example, one shinu would be you do it crisscross, which means you do it like that. How would you normally do it? You'd sort of just whip it up quickly. But if you do it like crisscross and then you take it out and then do it that way, you take it out, that's one possible shinui. The other shinui is mixing it with your bare hands. That's not the normal way you do it during the week. And then a third shinui is doing a handle of a spoon or a fork, but that only works for belila raka. Now,
what about mixing the other?
Oh, so one second, let me just finish off this. So you can make a belila raka, this drabanon dika mixture, for example, loose baby cereal, like one mass, but it flows, is so long as you use shinui, both shinuyim, i.e. a shinu b'seda and a shinu b'lisha. So again, shinu b'seda means you reverse the sequence, and shinu b'lisha would mean you do it either crisscross or with your bare hands. That would, or you do it with the handle of the spoon or the fork. Right, you do it a bit differently. In other words, you take the fork, instead of mixing it like that, you take the handle of the spoon or the fork and do it that way around. So you've got those two shinuyim, the belila raka becomes allowed. Now, for belila ava, for example, you make an egg salad on Shabbos, or charoses, or something like that, a mass that doesn't flow or flows very, very slowly, then for a belila ava, you need the shinu b'seda. That only works, the shinu b'seda, changing the order around. Let's say you normally have the egg and then you put the mayonnaise on top of it. Putting the mayonnaise first and then putting the egg only helps you, that shinu only helps you for a cotton or for a chayla where belila raka won't suffice. So the kid needs a firmer mixture of cereal, then you change the order, that would help for a cotton. or where Shinu B'Seder is not really needed. So, for example, you've got a thick binding agent like mayonnaise, but you still need a Shinu B'Lisha. But for the Belila Ava, you only Shinuim number 1 and 2 applies. So, for example, it's a Lemaisa. So you want to make an egg salad on Shabbos. So that is a Shaila V'Doraisa, Belila Ava, of Lisha on a Doraisa level. So how do you do it? So the point is, you still need a Shinu Belisha, but the only way to do it is to do it at the crisscross or to mix it with your bare hands, because reversing the Seder is not really going to help you. So that's not considered a proper Shinui. The only way to do it would be to do either a crisscross way or to mix it with your bare hands. So therefore, you've got the egg, and therefore to add the mayonnaise and you want to mix it together, or tuna or something like that, then you just take the spoon or the fork and you do it crisscross like that, take it out and do it that way, and you just do it repeatedly after many times. Eventually it will become mixed, not as well as it would be mixed during the week, but that would help you. Or to do it with your bare hands.
Does it matter the size of the cuts?
No. So just to summarize, so with Lisha, you've got making mixtures on Shabbos, making a dough. A Belila Ava is a Doraisa, that would be like a charosis or a proper dough or something like that. Belila Raka is more of a liquidy type, a loose baby cereal. It's one mass, but it does flow. And then you've got the watery mixtures, which are no problem. Belila Ava is Doraisa, Belila Raka is Drabonon, and the watery mixtures would be Muta, no problem. What? So wheat mix is a big discussion, because some say that it becomes a deraisa because it becomes mixed, it becomes like a solid mass. And there, like for example, in Reb Tzvi's, I know in Reb Tzvi's Shiva, they don't allow wheat mix on Shabbos because they're worried. Because at the end, you even if you eat it quickly and you add a lot of milk, that's how most people do it on Shabbos. You add a lot of milk, and therefore it becomes like a looser thing. And on Shabbos, he feels they're not, and therefore there are some. I think Reb Falk says that as well. Like with the raka, exactly. That's their concern. It starts as a raka and ends as a ava. But it might say if you pour a lot of liquid on and you eat it quickly and you eat it, then it wouldn't be a problem. Okay.